After reaping the rewards of having solar on my previous property for 9 years, I wanted to make sure that when I moved house, we had a good solar setup right from the start. So I focused on high-end products with the philosophy that I wanted a system that would last and remain competitive. I also knew that the size of the roof isn't going to change as time goes by, so I wanted to make sure that that was really, really maximised, that we have a good amount of panels on the roof and that they're highly efficient. Hi, I'm Renewable Energy Steve, and welcome to my channel. I wanted to run through what solar I have installed and what aspects stood out to me when making my choices. Why did I arrive with these particular arrays? Firstly, let's discuss the roof space. My south-facing roof has a 40-degree gradient. It has an azimuth of 195, so it's quite closely aligned with true south. I find that the sun tends to be completely aligned with the property around 140 on a summer's day. It has no notable shading, which is a big positive. The first array was installed on that side in October 2023, shortly after moving in. And for that aspect, we chose 12 SunPower Maxeon 3 430 watt panels. So when maximizing your roof space, the most important factor is efficiency. This particular panel has an efficiency of 22.7%, which for a very long time indeed was market leading. It's still very efficient even by this year's standards. Probably one of the top 5 panels still that you can buy. So these are the 430 watt panels, and of course the power tolerance does allow for an extra 5% as well. So essentially you are guaranteed it can achieve 430. Of course you need the right weather conditions in order to do so. Another key aspect of these particular panels that impressed me was the power temperature coefficient. So with this being 0.27, what that means is if you were to have a 35-degree day, which would be 10 degrees above the standard desk conditions, then you'd only see a reduction in efficiency of 2.7%, which is pretty negligible. There have been instances of some of the older panels losing as much as 10% when elevated by an additional 10 degrees or so. That's clearly not the case with this. With it being on the south side, the temperature coefficient was an important factor, because it will be on a sunny day exposed to the sun for the full 12 hours. The other thing, of course, which drew me to these panels is the warranty. It's quite normal in the solar industry to get warranties as long as 25 or even 30 years, but SunPower offered a 40-year warranty, which I hadn't seen many other places at all. 40 years, that's kind of bonkers. That's a really, really long time. That's like half the expected lifespan of a human. I mean, that's a really long time. Also, the degradation curve is hugely impressive when you consider year 1 is guaranteed to work at 98%, and then 0.25 reduction after that. That means after your 40 years, you've still got a panel that can do 88% of what it's started with, which is incredible in terms of durability. So that was another factor as well when considering a long-term purchase. So as well as panel efficiency, I also looked at efficiency in inverters, and one that caught my eye was the SolarEdge SE 5000H. That's the 5 kilowatt version, which is sized appropriately for my 5.16 kilowatt array. Now, as you can see, the efficiency curve is incredible. It's actually above 99% for most of its working range, peaks at about 99.2, and anything just after 1000 watts will give us that 99%. So typically on the market, most of them tend to be about 97, some of them peak a little bit higher, and tend to dip depending on what their working ranges are, but this is incredibly consistent. And of course there's many other advantages with SolarEdge as well. Obviously data tracking is a key point. You can have a look at each additional panel, how it's doing, so any obvious issues with panels can be identified really quickly, or even if just one of them needs cleaning as a result of bird poo or anything like that. Of course, what SolarEdge is well known for is optimization. So situations where one panel might be giving a lot more output than others, such as shading, it's not going to bring down the panels nearby, as it might do sometimes on a traditional string system. You might argue that this was probably kind of overkill going for the SolarEdge option in this example, because we actually have very little shading indeed. Of course, there's a few kind of rooftops and trees nearby. You'd only really notice that at the end of the day and at the start of the day. Having said that, every little helps. Yeah, I mean, this was the right solution for myself, because I was very much looking for maximum efficiency, really trying to get the most out of the roof. Of course, it does come at a cost, and yeah, there's cheaper solutions available. Upon realising how effective an east and west array can be, I decided to investigate solar on these aspects of the house as well. That roof has obvious shading, unfortunately, both from neighbours' houses and other parts of my own roof. Having said that, it is still quite well suited to an array to capture the early morning sun in anything from about the spring to the autumn, and same with the evening. On this, the azimuth is 105 and 285, and the roof angle is 45 degrees. So on to the second array then, and for that I chose the REA Fusion 2 for 40 watt panels. A key aspect here, again, efficiency, and these are down as 22.53, which is very, very close to what the SunPowers achieve. Now, critically, the dimensions are quite small on these panels. You get a lot of very large panels these days, but that's not very suited for the east and west dimensions in the way that our roof is laid out. You definitely wouldn't get 5 larger panels on there. You'd be lucky to get 4. Just because of the way it's got a diagonal slant. So I was limited to smaller panels, and these fitted the bill pretty nicely with that efficiency in order to make the most of it. Now, these were marketed as very, very good in low light conditions. Of course, they got 3 bypass diodes, as you would expect. It's the N-type HJT architecture, which is generally seen as a little less mature technology than some of the other ones, but with a lot of potential. So I was curious to see how that would work out in this particular application. They are also bifacials, which is interesting because depending on the direction of the sun and the shade patterns and all that, we might actually benefit from that. Now, on the spec sheet, it kind of fancifully says what would happen if you got 10% additional from the bifacial aspects. I don't think that's a realistic scenario unless you were to do something on the roof itself to reflect that, some kind of reflective material, which typical roofs don't have. But we could still gain something from it. My estimate's around about 1%, which I know is very small, but it's better than nothing at all, which is what we'd have if we didn't have a bifacial panel. So from that aspect, it's a kind of unknown, to be confirmed how much that's going to help. And I don't think we'll ever really know for sure, because we'll never see data which says what comes from the underside of the panel and what comes from the main top side. But I thought it was worth taking the gamble on the bifacials. Temperature coefficient as well is reasonable. It's not quite matching the SunPower, but 0.3, it's close. That was less important for the east and west sides, of course, because they're not going to be getting the full sun all day in the same way that a south-facing panel would. So I was comfortable with that being a little lower, but it's still decent. Again, it comes with 25-year product warranties and 30-year performance, so no concerns there. It was a slightly cheaper panel than the SunPowers, but again, it's a decent kind of premium feeling product. And with the goal of filling up the roof space to absolutely maximise generation, we ended up with 5 on the east side and 5 on the west side. For inverters, I went for the Enphase IQ8 HC microinverters. Now the HCs are the ones with the 380 watt max continuous output. There are lower models available, and with them I would be quite concerned about clipping, but 380 watts is not too far off the peak of the panel, and given that these panels are mounted on the east and west side rather than the south, it's unlikely there would be much time spent above 380 watts at all, so they seem like a good choice. They were marketed as very, very good in low light conditions, and they have a startup voltage of around 22. The philosophy here behind why I thought that would be effective would be that different modules can become active at different points. Given that shading is going to be quite an obvious issue, particularly with the roof itself, the other aspect of the roof providing shading. Some modules will be coming online before others, and we can get the maximum out of each single one. Same in the evenings, really, as well as the mornings. The downsides, of course, with microinverters is if they do require maintenance, that's someone's got to get up there on the roof, which would require scaffolding, which can be expensive. But the comfort here is that these microinverters do have a 25-year warranty, which is well beyond what you'd get on most inverters, where you'd probably be looking at something more like 10 years. These particular microinverters as well, they pair very well with the REA Fusion 2 panels, so well in fact that they've made an AC module where the microinverter is actually attached to the module, and that's the model I've got installed in this particular array. I hope that's given you an insight for what I picked and why. In future videos we'll be exploring the performance of these arrays and the financial impact. If this is of interest, be sure to subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.